is, can it be safe? If you've ever tried to get an AI to be accurate, you'll quickly realize that it can actually be very inaccurate and possibly even dangerous. So the question is can we make AI safe for us to use? So ladies and gentlemen, please now join me in welcoming Dr. Eric Feron, Professor of Electrical and Computer Engineering, who will introduce Ariadne, a common sense thread for enabling safety in systems that incorporate artificial intelligence. Big round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the introduction.
My pleasure.
Am I being heard? Yeah. I think that maybe not. Okay, very good. So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Eric Feron, and yes, when I saw the theme of this conference that included AI without limits and within ethics, I thought, okay, so what part of ethics should I be talking about? Having been working in aviation for a number of years, I thought that safety belongs to ethics and is certainly a core aspect of what AI should be thinking about in the near future, maybe now. Okay, let me see where I put this slide mover. So, of course, the idea is that whatever you do and whatever you enable AI to do, it should be always one plan B ahead. In other terms, you cannot engage into anything, including with AI, without thinking about what if and how do I get out of this mess. So I will talk a little bit about safety in a general context and then talk about the further topics. So one of the things that I've learned in aviation is that safety is critical. Safety is to be accounted for in any aspect of aviation, for example, and that is the very reason why none of you, or very few of you, probably were worried when they stepped into the airplane that brought you to Yerevan. If it were not for a deliberate and maybe oversized attention to safety, we would not be boarding these aircraft without any problem. So for that purpose, we have lots of tools. We have very disciplined design processes on the one hand, and we have, as part of these design processes, a lot of attention being paid to not only hardware but also software, and especially as software becomes increasingly complex, you know, the ability to verify that the software functions well is utmost important, including, of course, when you start putting in some form of artificial intelligence, which in complexity beats pretty much all the software that is currently on board the aircraft you fly today. Coming to that, you have system architectures, you have regulations. Regulations meaning documents that sort of tell you what steps you should be undertaking in order to demonstrate that your system is safe. And of course, you have a lot of technologies that have been sort of developed and put in practice. The last aspect is, of course, when it comes to safety, is education, educating people for safety, educating people to be careful about safety. Now, let me give you an example of a case where AI would have been blamed, and even though it does not involve AI, it is the story of an airplane that went from Wichita State all the way to Utah, and it was loaded with players, basketball players, if my memory is correct. And in order to go from Wichita to Utah, you have to cross the Rockies. And the pilots decided to go through the scenic route. The scenic route meaning fly within a valley, and so that people could contemplate the mountains that were above them. pretty much like I'm sure you can feel when you land in Yerevan. So now here's the problem. The pilots were flying along and at some point reached the end of the valley. There was no exit whatsoever. The airplane found itself stuck facing a wall in front of it. And facing that wall, being too low in altitude, the airplane had only one option, but to crash. And this is what happened, again, for a good part, because there was absence of planning for can I get back to where I came from at any time? And the airplane had a turn radius that was way too large for it to be able to make a U-turn. So the consequences were pretty dramatic. Nobody survived, and these kind of things that the pilots did. Once you start relying, for example, on automation and AI to plan this traffic instead of trusting the pilot, should be accounted for from the get-go. As a result, I wrote this thing named Ariadne, which says that all safety-critical operations, and don't worry, it's not only about airplanes that we're talking about safety-critical. We're also talking about the robots that will carry you when you break a leg, or maybe will carry your elderly parents when they are in the hospital and need to be moved from one bed to another. So all these safety-critical operations should be planned essentially with a plan B in mind, meaning that there should be a rescue solution for absolutely every operation that you plan. And by the way, the contingency procedures should not be triggered when you feel there is a problem. They should be triggered as soon as you realize you're running out of backup options. Okay? You run out of backup options, you have to trigger an emergency, not when you see the emergency facing you. And I call it a threat, not a technique, because that is really what it is. It doesn't have any methodological contents other than a basic working principle. I call it a threat for another reason. It's because the name I picked from the myth of Ariadne, whose lover, Theseus, was hired to essentially kill an awful monster in the island of Crete. And the monster was hiding in a maze named the Labyrinth, designed by Daedalus. And it was said that once you enter this maze, you cannot exit the maze. So Ariadne, being in love with Theseus, decided that she would trick the architect of the labyrinth and equip her lover with a spool of rope, okay, that it would be able to unspool as it made progress through the labyrinth, such that at any time the Theseus would be able to find his way back out. And so the story ends well, which means that Theseus was able to do his job and then exit the labyrinth. Now, the story doesn't tell what would have happened had Theseus run out of rope before meeting with the Minotaur, this monster. So what is quite interesting is that this conscience about Ariadne is certainly more important in this industry, which is aviation. It's probably the first industry where things became absolutely critical. And indeed, the first thing we learn when we fly, whether it is as a pleasure pilot or as a professional pilot, is to always keep in mind, should your airplane get into trouble, where will you land? And when we are, like me, an amateur pilot, what we are asked to do is to look very carefully for golf clubs. Each time there's a golf course, there's a good landing spot. And this is where you should land, not on the highways. And this is also a principle which is applied to, as I said, professional aviation, whereby when you travel from, let's say, the United States of America to Europe, the trajectories followed by the aircraft is strongly dominated by the ability for this aircraft to reach an airport nearby, whatever the phase of the flight is. And so as a result, the trajectories that are followed by aircraft flying from America to France or from any country to any other country have to abide by rules such that, for example, you must stay within 2 hours flying to any airport. And this is why you have, for example, in the middle of nowhere in Greenland, airports with a runway that can welcome a 747 or an Airbus A380. It is only because it is important to have that airport for airplanes to be able to cross the Atlantic. Hopefully, of course, you never use these backup airports, but sometimes you do have to land, and because, for example, an engine quits, but everything is planned such that even if your engine quits, you're still able to fly safely to a rescue point. So I will skip further slides. I mean, this is the idea here. We've implemented this idea in a flight test in the US, where we did not ask our aircraft to have always a backup point, but we said, well, we're not exactly sure about the AI that we put in the algorithm that would guide one of these aircraft. So what we did is we said, you can move ahead and go towards your goal, but always keep in mind the option of literally stopping. Airplanes don't stop, but they can do circles, and that's how we ended up with an aircraft that kept flying to its goal, but keeping in mind always, always, always the ability to enter a loitering pattern. When we started testing this algorithm, there were so many mistakes in it that the airplane never stopped loitering. But then after a while, of course, the loitering became more and more sparse, and we're able to get to our destination. However, this particular safety feature was particularly useful for us not to escape the part of the airspace that we were allowed to fly in with that unmanned aircraft. I will skip this part. It is another description of the same principle. I want to talk about this principle of always keeping a backup solution. Unfortunately, safety, building backup solutions for pretty much anything that can happen to you is expensive. It's expensive, and it's therefore very tempting to forget about it. And this is why it is very tricky. It's because most of the time you don't need it. So, and you don't know when you're going to need it. So what I'm showing here is a snapshot of an American highway during rush hour. What happens is you see the option for plan B has been erased. The emergency braking lane has been put to contribution to allow regular traffic go there. And as a result, the traffic now doesn't have any backup option in case an accident occurs. The emergency lane is already occupied. There's another example of this that happened in France during COVID. France is a country which cares about safety, but they had stockpiled a lot of masks for in case of a pandemic. But the pandemic took a little while to happen. The masks were procured in 2010 approximately, and by 2019 everybody had forgotten about these masks and at best had gotten rid of them. Yes, safety is a big problem because it is expensive and the accident can happen anytime. And so as a result, the main concern that you should be concerned about when introducing AI for safety is to face many people saying, no, this is expensive, what will it be useful for? However, I guarantee you that we won't see any robot carrying you around before these points have been addressed. Thank you very much for your presentation, for your presence.